we developed a model called LSD, which was Lakshmi, Saraswati and Durga. We have to give all these three things in equal number, and anything in excess will be problem. One thing which I see in entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs, not the professionals, give them a problem, their solution will be very different than the textbook solutions, and that's why they are successful. And every successful person has a pattern of decision making, pattern of going to the edge. They can take decisions which nobody else can even think about. I love the word failure.
Thank you, Kishore sir, for doing this. I recently met you for your podcast, and there were so many insights. I think I went home and I made notes, of after the podcast of everything I learned. And I think that's a feeling that most people get when they hear you or they converse with you. So thank you for doing this with us today.
Good to be here.
So Kishore sir, let's start with your childhood. आप एक traditional Marwari business family में पैदा हुए, but you mentioned in some place that you didn't have any business idols. या आपके कोई ऐसे inspiration नहीं थे except you were inspired by Dhirubhai Ambani. So what was your mindset while growing up?
My father and there were 6 brothers, and we were 13 of us in the next generation. So I think life was all around so many uncle, aunts and people around you, and we used to live in a building where our doors were open, 100 children playing down. So it was outdoor. Didn't understand life, to be very honest, until the age of, till I passed 10th in a way. Never moved out of, because my school was just 200, 300 meters away from where we used to live. So the childhood was not exposed as much, but the exposure was around sports, playing with kids around, and they were formative years. And after 10th and 11th, after I started going to college, I think the world opened up. And that time your understanding of life, understanding of multiple disciplines of life started coming up. I would have watched every movie which came in then, made a lot of new friends, started visiting restaurants. So it was we have grown up learning by ourselves and reading books. I think in childhood we read comics. I think then we started reading fiction, and then started reading business books, and then multiple disciplines.
Yeah.
So book was major part of learning for us. And I think the role models were not many which were formed then, business role models. And there was one Mr. Dhirubhai Ambani at that point of time, whose stories used to come around everywhere. And that's what we were exposed to.
So you said something interesting, you learn about life, and it happened after a certain age when you moved to college, and you were exposed, so to say, new friends, new experiences. So what was that time when, they say this about entrepreneur of business, कि वो कीड़ा काट लेता है, like it comes in your head.
I don't remember that, to be honest. We formed a club in our building society, and then I took the lead and we organized Dandiya. That became very popular. So that was where I realized there are certain organizing skills. We were very different. We used to be very different in terms of organizing. Our tickets were designed very differently. We had sponsorship that time, which was unheard of. We got in bands, strobe lights, which was it was probably first time of many things which we did. And the word got disco dandiya got converted, and so we were, in some sense, I was instrumental in originating that new idea. That time I realized there is some organizing skills, because to bring together 2,000, 3,000 people in a particular place is not so easy. So that's like calling customers to your stores and businesses. So that's, I think, early years, that was something which I worked upon. I realized that you can organize oneself, create a team of people, and build some creative ideas.
And back in the day, to get 3,000 people without any digital social media, which now seems almost impossible.
That was another world.
Yeah, that was another world. So what were the formative years then in a place like Bombay, where lakhs of people come to try and make it and try to kind of fulfill their dreams, called the city of dreams?
I think ignorance was a virtue. We were not exposed. So we're not aware of anything. I think my understanding of business started with seeing advertising.
Okay.
I used to look at people who used to advertise, and that sometimes fascinated me. And I started understanding what products are, what brands are, how do you attract and get people in. And I was in textile, the parents were in textile business, so my inclination toward textile and garments were there always. So that time there were brands like Chirag Din, Double Bull, Cliff, and that, I think that got me a little bit getting some understanding of business.
When your first venture was very young, ab 20 साल के थे, when you started the jeans business, and then you went on to menswear. In these two, what were your learnings that maybe sometimes you still reflect upon? Because in the nascent stages, you're doing everything yourself. You're learning on the job. I myself feel like what I've learned so far, most of it has been while figuring things out in the business. So
Very similar, I would say.
Yeah.
So some ideas come into your mind, and then you want to do something. First thing I did besides studying, I was a student of HR college. Never attended college. I remember attending college lecture only for a day, single day.
In your whole college life.
In the whole college life, never failed. Stood outside the college. Started observing people. The habit of observation, I think, must have come from there. And then getting into watching how businesses are done. We had a shop at Mulji Jetha Market, MJ Market. Going there in the afternoon and trying to understand what fabric is. And I did a weaving course also in Sasmira to understand how fabrics are made. So then I did a chartered accountancy entrance exam. I cleared that also. So I did multiple things at that time, and I used to read a lot. So marketing, advertising fascinated me, and that probably made me understand that you can create new fabric for the new business which was emerging then, which was ready-made garments. And that's where I started creating. I created my first fabric called stonewash fabric, which became quite popular. Before that, I had my own looms, and I started weaving a fabric out of waste yarn, and that also became quite popular. So then got exposed to the garment and the clothing industry. And then I thought, why can't we create our own brand?
Correct.
And I think then the journey started. If you can build your own brand on trousers, that was my first project which I did. And thereon I kept on doing something or the other.
So 3 questions here. First is, again, like, what are some of the things that you learned while building your own business from scratch that could help our
I think it was ignorance, to be honest. Sometimes when you are learned too much, then you start slotting yourself into something. And you try too hard to understand the subject. I think things flowed naturally because I didn't understand, I didn't know what was the organization design that time. I didn't understand a business plan also that time. So I was not a management student, but so I think ignorance was my biggest virtue that time.
And you mentioned, that you were reading a lot.
A lot of reading.
What were some of the books that you read at that time?
I would have read most of the books written in business, in multiple disciplines. A lot of books have influenced me. One of the books which influenced me was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Awaken the Giant Within, Anthony Robbins. I used to read Hindi literature earlier, long time back, especially satire.
How come?
I don't know.
Such an interesting choice of literature.
Yeah, so I must have read Premchand, I must have read Kamleshwar, a lot of Hindi authors. Then English. I studied design as a subject. I studied philosophy lately. So multiple subjects, I would say. So maybe the learning came out of meeting people.
Correct. So, you mentioned in this one podcast where you spoke about left and right. And you said that it's the congruence of both is kind of necessity. It is something that's necessary but isn't taught as much in our schools, in our curriculums. What would you say was your strength during this time? Was it building a brand? Was it your marketing? Was it your creativity? Was it your design?
I think in hindsight, I can say that I was a right brain person more than a left brain. And right brain was all about creating something.
Correct.
So in my history of business, we have worked in creating multiple formats, multiple brands, multiple businesses or multiple ideas. Once I did a count and it came up to 120. So up till a period of time. So it was a lot of creation. So correct. I think then I realized the strength is in creating something.
Correct. And you mentioned this one incident, which you said was the biggest letdown when a big retailer was supposed to come and you thought it was a big order and it just placed an order of 8 jeans. Do you think there was a turning point where you thought...
It was a disappointment. It was a crazy disappointment. And with every disappointment, it tells you that now you have to do something much, much more. So had that not happened, I would have not done something else. Then I wanted to place my jeans in a particular store. Then it happened. That made me come into large format retail. So it was multiple reasons why you do what you do.
But do you think that setback kind of propelled you in a better direction?
I
In
think
hindsight.
everything happens for a reason.
Okay.
And for every thing you take a decision has to be some negativity, some negative impact which has on somewhere something negative happened which makes you take a decision which is much bigger than what you had imagined earlier.
Or you had planned.
Hmm?
Or
what you had planned. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So they were the reasons for you to work harder or think much bigger.
And then you opened in 91 your first Pantaloon store, of course, in Goa. And something interesting, right, where you said two things. You said that was that family feeling, like the family will shop together. How did you nail that sentiment? You know, that let's make this a place where one can come with their family and shop together.
No,
have
I
that
started
experience.
early stores were started with menswear in mind.
Yeah.
And after 5-6 years, I realized that men whom we used to cater to now is married and has a family. How can we build a family store? That's where in 1997 we created a family store in Calcutta called Pantaloons. And the idea was a person gets married, his wife is then his children. So we have to cater to the entire family.
Not
And
just
family at that time used to shop together. The social media influence which is now, where everybody has become an individual, was not there that time. That time we all used to watch Ramayana and Mahabharata on television all together. The whole family was one unit.
Correct.
I think with social media, the unit has changed to every individual is a smartphone user and his consumption is very different than the consumption used to happen at that time. So family store in current context will have not so much of a meaning, but in that context it had a lot of meaning then.
You also spoke about, you know, the concept of the crowd should always be there. I've also read your book in which you spoke about the first experience of opening the Big Bazaar stores where traffic was shut because the lines were so big. How did you have the foresight? You know, I'm trying to get into your mind on these very abstract concepts that you've placed into shopping, right? Like when you psychologically see a crowd, I want to have that. Or like, let's make this a family experience. How did you arrive at these insights? Is there anything particular that you kind of observed, or did you go out of your way to observe?
I think crowd begets crowd, which is very, very well known. Okay. And I think India, the markets, you will see a lot of crowd, whether it's you go to a Crawford market, any Sabji Bazaar. So unless you don't get, you normally don't want to shop at a place where it is not crowded.
When you think, why is nobody here?
Hmm?
Why is nobody here?
Yeah, why is nobody here? There has to be a reason.
Yeah.
So, same place, if you go into a food court in a big place and there is no crowd at certain place, I think you will doubt it unless it's a brand where you know the product is X.
Yeah.
So, it's different.
Correct. And your understanding of India is very nuanced. Even in your book that you read, you explain India 1, India 2, India 3. How has the context of India changed since the one that you explained in your book?
I think India 1, India 2, 3 theory still holds well.
Okay. If you could explain it for our audience.
What I said, the India 1 is the consuming class, which consumes people, which consumes products which are value-added products, wherein there is some value addition done of some processing is done. India 2 is the serving class who makes India 1's life better, which is the drivers, the helpers, the peons, the maids, the domestic help, plus a lot of services India 1 is used to. And India 3 is, I would say, a struggling class emerging out of food, clothing and shelter. So, these are the three Indias, and all the patterns of consumption of India 1, India 2, India 3 is different. India 1 consumes, they are like consumers like anywhere else in the world. They consume significant amount of products in their lifetime. India 2 consumes, they are aspirational, they want to consume more, but they don't have that kind of money or income to consume more. And India 3 is a struggling class in a way, they consume basics only.
The bare minimum.
Yeah. So, when you are marketing to people, what do you market and how do you market becomes very important, because most of the marketing definition of consumption was around SECs, A, B, C and income groups, and I think this was not related to income group as much as it was related to the societal hierarchy of what job you are doing.
Correct. And how has that evolved today? Do you think
It's still the same.
It's the same, but has a percentage moved between?
Percentages will keep on moving.
Okay.
But not moving to an extent of what people imagined.
Like as a monumental shift?
It's not a monumental shift.
Okay.
I would say in the last 15, 17 years when we wrote this theory, it would have moved by 2-3 percentage points.
Yeah.
Not maybe 4 percentage point to the max.
What is
Not significant.
What is the distribution of percentage?
I would say 10 to 12% is India 1, 30 to 40% is India 2, and balance is India 3.
Okay. And that's more or less been in those same parameters over 50
Earlier,
years.
the India 1 would be much lesser, maybe 8 to 10.
Okay.
It's become 10 to 12.
And how do you see it moving forward? What do you
It will be interesting to watch. I think there are new economies getting created. You are part of the new creative
the creator economy? Yeah.
and creator economy. I would say a lot of economies are getting created. A lot of startup world, a lot of new product categories, a lot of new consumption is happening in the country, a lot of deliveries. I think the way we consume everything has changed. The way we consume content, the way we consume food, the way we consume the storytelling. I think everything has changed.
And how do you see it moving? Like, what is your
So there are new
foresight?
participants in this economy.
Yeah.
So this economy will. I think the barriers have broken. Geographic barriers have broken. The classes, the way it used to see content has changed. So I think we have broken a lot of shackles.
Okay.
So this will make something new which will come about from this.
Yeah.
There are early green shoots, but very difficult to predict
Exactly what.
what will change.
Yeah. So, through these kind of theories that you've posed, you've also said that you were reading a lot. You've spoken about certain lessons that on management that you learned, say, from a Tirupati temple, and you've had the access to kind of study these organization units and implement them in business. What is something else that you learned that's interesting from an India context? Like, okay,
we learned a lot. We always said nothing in the world is happening new. I had a basic theory that life is not so complicated. There are primary only 5 colors. Music has only 7 surs in a way. And there are 9 recorded emotions of human beings. The world revolves around that. So it's not so complex. So how does one understand life in its simplicity is what I understood. So nothing is so complex. If you look at cinema or storytelling, there are only 6 plots in which all storytelling revolves around. So unfortunately, we study so much, we over-intellectualize everything and we make it complicated. So what I discovered that everything which is happening in the world is recorded somewhere. And that was our mythology. And how can we learn from mythology? And that's where we started working on. We had somebody who was a very knowledgeable on mythology at that time, Devdutt Patnaik, who joined us as a chief belief officer. We started decoding mythology and created our leadership model on mythology. Our HR model was, compensation model was built on mythology. So all new, so the basic understanding was very simple, that everything is recorded, nothing new is happening.
So tell us about this. Tell us about the HR. Tell us about some of the principles that you've learned, because it's such a fascinating topic where you can integrate mythology and business.
So like our leadership model was built out of how temples are made in India.
Okay.
And what do you show? The leadership model where the eyes are the vision, and there is the Vard Mudra, and there is Bhiksha, there is that sugar cane, there is that Ankush which is there. So all the symbols and the gates are very small, you have to go bowing down. So everything teaches you a lot.
Yeah.
So that was one model which we made for leadership. Then another model we made for people was how do you make a person very happy with working with you. Then we developed a model called LSD, which was Lakshmi, Saraswati and Durga. We have to give all these 3 things in equal number, and anything in excess will be problem. Lakshmi in excess is a problem. Saraswati is the intellectual growth, and Durga is the identity and the title which we give. So how do you balance it out? So this was a model on which we used to review people and compensate them.
Can you elaborate on this point? I believe that
it's a simple model. Lakshmi, Saraswati, Durga, a human being working with you needs all these 3.
Correct. No, but you said something interesting. You said in the right amount, in the right quantity.
Right amount, anything in excess. We had a lot of people who were a lot of Saraswati. So you can't get performance out of them.
Okay.
If you give Durga too much, and they will take a title and they will show it to the world, and again that's a challenge. And too much of Lakshmi, then it's again a problem. So anything in excess is a problem.
Okay.
So when we saw that whoever got excess of anything, they were not able to perform the best.
Really? So how do you account for that right amount?
Very difficult again. So you have to balance it out.
Okay.
Some people are very, very inclined towards money. So don't get them. Some people are very, very, what you say, intellectual.
Yeah.
But then you have to give them a position which is very, very different. No, don't get them into the mainstream. And the titles, I think people get envy with what title you have.
Yeah.
So the organizations have their own challenges of what title people have. I think luckily in the new age economy, it's very good. Everybody is called a co-founder or a...
Chief something.
Yeah. So this title is a Durga ultimately. And too much of Durga is also a challenge.
Yeah. Going back to your previous model of leadership, what is the significance of when you have to bow your head while entering a place of worship?
Humility.
Humility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So our temples will teach you a lot. So they have all the symbols and rituals which makes you a perfect human being in a way.
Please elaborate. Let's talk about this. Let's get into the details.
If you look at the idol, the eyes, you can see the eyes are always larger.
Okay. In proportion.
In proportion.
Okay.
That means you should have a vision, darshan. Then you will see a ankush. Ankush is reining people in.
What is an ankush exactly?
Ankush is to control.
Okay.
To rein in. You can go out of line. There has to be somebody who can give in. We have to give you what you call some bait, that is sugarcane. You have to think bigger. Then there is that chawal, which is supposed to bring in that. There is a meaning of each and every thing, element which is there.
Correct.
So, and then you have to remove the fear and you have to make people confident. So, all the symbols in a temple tell you something.
How can one learn about this? Say, I'm very interested.
I'll give you that whole leadership model which we created.
Oh, really? Okay. Amazing. Do you think we can upload it for people?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Totally.
So we'll do that.
We had a printed thing which was given to each and everyone.
Yeah. Okay. Very fascinating. And how did you arrive upon this?
The simple thought, everything, what is happening in the world is nothing new. It's all been recorded.
But
so why don't we go back to the past and decode it?
Yeah. That it's...
If you look at Mahabharata, every human situation which can happen has been recorded in Mahabharata.
Correct.
So there's nothing new which is happening.
Yeah. Coming to the context of philosophy, which you said that now in the recent past you've been studying, how have some, either in a religious text context, like you've read these, the Vedas, the different scripts that are there, or philosophies of life, helped you in different ways? Say that, of course there have been so many challenges. How have you kind of allowed your mind to control the situation as opposed to the other way around?
I think we are going through multiple challenges, and to deal with the challenges, there was no other option but to move into philosophy. Because philosophy will tell you that what is in your control, work on that. What is not in your control, leave it. Think about the worst, and something better will only happen, because the worst will never come about and you will feel happy. So philosophy will tell you a lot of things, how to deal with any situation.
Yeah.
And if you are dealing with a situation and you get into the thick and thin of that situation, you will not be able to come out. So one has to deal at a very different level, and that level only philosophy can get you there.
So talk to us a little bit about some of the philosophies in depth that helped you during
I am continuing to deal with
yeah.
And I think to maintain the sanity of what's going around you, I think that has helped, philosophy has helped me.
Yeah.
Philosophy was connecting with the cosmic, connecting with the universe, looking at the universe, looking at one small planet Earth. You feel so insignificant.
Yeah.
So that's what philosophy is all about. We give too much of importance to us. We are not so important in the scheme of things, and then nothing affects you as much as otherwise you would think will affect you. We give too much of importance to life, to birth, to legacy, I think our belief system has been made in a very different way. You have to think for 7 pidi. But once you are dead, you are dead. It's over.
It's done. What is some of the... Do you have any practices that connect you to this cosmic?
No, nothing.
Nothing.
I'm not a religious person. I have been atheist all my life. I've become agnostic now.
Okay.
I do go to the temple with my wife sometimes. And I think I had a lot of cosmic connections in a way.
Elaborate. What does that mean?
I have serendipity, a lot of
Okay.
serendipity moments for me in life, especially with the Hare Rama Hare Krishna movement also.
Yeah.
So I just happened to be there in a temple with a group of people and
As an atheist.
as an atheist.
Okay.
And the head of that thing comes in, out of 20 people, he hugs me the first and you get connected. I read his book, you start understanding what is Bhakti. And I got very fascinated by the Bhakti ras. And what does Bhakti mean? And then I started dwelling more on that subject of Bhakti ras. So enjoying that Bhakti ras was a very interesting experience.
Yeah. When did this happen in your life?
Another 10 years back.
10 years. And what did it teach you when you read?
Nothing. It is a connection. There are moments, there are people you will meet in life you would have never imagined. And a lot of people who can touch your soul. And a lot of people who can get into another dimension of thinking. So all the journey of life has made this interesting, and that's how you deal with life. Because there are so many people who have touched you, so many people who you have taught you or you have learned from them. And that's what the memories of life are.
Yeah.
So I'm dealing with a new subject now, podcast. I think that has taught me a lot.
Yeah, it's everywhere. I think
I'm
every
learning,
person-
I'm not reading books as much as I'm watching podcasts now,
Yeah.
because that's my new learning model.
Which podcast are you watching?
I'm trying to understand the podcast community, everyone, I would say, some bit of everyone. But Nikhil Kamath definitely fascinated me. That was the first podcast I went to, and I didn't know what are the podcasts. I saw it during the way and then started understanding what podcast is all about.
You said something interesting. It was after that podcast that everywhere you went, somebody has come and told you, I saw you online. So was that a shift also where
It was a big shift for me, because people know me for the recent podcast and not for the other thing which you would have done. So, and especially the younger generation connect. So I think that makes again life very enriching.
Yeah. Let's go back to a little bit of philosophy. Do you think that you practice detachment?
Yes, I have consciously practiced detachment.
How?
I don't know how, but I don't get emotionally attached to whatever we create now anymore. That has been done. I think I made a movie long time back. I don't remember, 16, 17 years ago. Cinema film called Na Tum Jano Na Hum with Hrithik Roshan, Saif Ali Khan. The movie was doing, the subject was good. I was not so much involved in making of the movie, but the day the movie got released, it didn't work. And I wrote to myself, don't get emotionally attached to whatever you create, because you will get into a hello imaginary attraction to what you create. Normally everybody has. So don't get attached to what you create. And from there on, I think I practiced that.
Yeah. Is it easy to practice that?
I don't know.
No.
For me, maybe that event helped me to
Put
go
things
about
in
it.
perspective.
Yeah.
You said something interesting. You said I wrote down. So do you journal?
I don't journal, but I used to write a lot of letters. I was, in my early days, maybe when I was 15, 16, I had pen friends and I must have exchanged thousands of letters.
Really? So people you've
So
never
what to
met?
do? People I've never met.
Okay.
So there is the story of a pen friend. I must have exchanged 400, 500 letters.
Really?
And after 30 years, I connected. I've never met her ever.
Huh.
But after 30 years, I did connect with her.
But how did you stumble upon
She
this pen
stumbled
pal?
upon me.
Huh.
She became a teacher and she was explaining to her children what pen friends were all about. She remembered and she searched me and she found me.
And you all met after 30 years.
Maybe after 30 years plus.
That's crazy.
Maybe more than that.
Yeah. One such person the last decade who you've learned from just by observance or just meeting after reading, and what did you learn?
Again, naming people is again a challenge,
Okay.
because you silently observe people. There are very people who are close to me who, actually, to be very honest, you learn from everybody.
Yeah.
Because every person who is insignificant also tells you a lot.
Can you give me an example?
So sometimes I've seen people handling situation, very ordinary people, but handling situation much, much better than me in a given situation or a given circumstances. I can get antagonized, I can get irritated, but I've seen people maintaining the calm and dealing with the subject much, much better. So I would say ordinary people, every people is teaching you something. But successful people, my reason for meeting successful people is you see a pattern why they are, and every successful person has a pattern. pattern of decision making, which is very interesting, pattern of going to the edge. They are very edgy in the sense they can take decisions which nobody else can even think about. Then you see another pattern of how they manage all the resources which they have. You see them as a good orator or good speaker. And another pattern what I have seen in successful people is they are always good listener and a good learner.
Okay. So these 4-5 things are similar across
You'll find
industries?
across all the successful people, all
Right.
these patterns. So my whole thing was all about when you meet successful people, what are the patterns you see? Somebody has something quite remarkable in them. And most of the successful people I have seen are good givers also.
Yeah. What about habits?
Hmm?
What about habits? Like, they say that certain successful people, top 1%, are always doing certain amount of things. I think reading comes in that list. There's meditating, there's some kind of alignment, there's some kind of introspection. There's a lot written about journaling. There's a lot written about kind of, being, like you said, like not left or right, but like, yes, being hustlers, but also having a sense of spirituality alignment. So what are some of the habits that you've seen?
I think most of the habits what you are talking of.
Oh, the same ones.
Quite a lot.
Yeah.
Quite a lot. But one thing which I see in entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs, not the professionals, they are little cut, give them a problem, their solution will be very different than the textbook solutions.
It's out of the box.
It's out of your imagination at times.
Yeah.
And that's why they are successful.
You also mentioned something about living on the edge. You said in one interview that the family business didn't appeal to you from that lens because of the risk appetite. And you've taken certain risks as you've moved on in your career. In hindsight, now what is your opinion on risk taking in general?
I always believed ignorance was the best. Now you
But
know
you
too
didn't
much.
kind of analyze,
You don't analyze too much. And that's the best. Today my daughters are building some business. They have to make a business plan first. And so much of detailing goes into it. So that whole kick about, because plan A never works, that's my theory. It's always the plan B which works. If you get into doing something, you learn something and you create your plan B. So it must happen with you also, it happens with everybody.
Yeah.
The original thought from which you started never survives in its original form.
Correct.
So that's why the business plan which you make in a startup world, they don't survive. The other plan comes about.
Because you have to account for fluidity.
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many different variables you just can't
Absolutely.
account
All the
for.
assumptions get changed.
Yeah. It's dynamic.
Yeah, it is.
Would you think that back in the day, owing to this ignorance, owing to the lack of social media, digital, was it better than the context today where these things are also a benefit? Like social media can get your business from A to Z really quickly.
So my view is, was that better or this better? I'm not a judgmental person. I think that world, that was there, and in this world, I think you have to operate with the rules of the game, engagement here. There's so much of information available. Today, when I have to search something, AI, I find everything out of that. It's so easy.
Yeah.
I don't need to speak to 5 people. I don't need to read a book. I don't need to refer anywhere. I get an answer in 1 second about anything.
Yeah.
So the world has become, there is so much of information available to you in the way you want it. That was not there at all earlier. So one has to deal with this. Now you can't be ignorant.
Yeah.
You can't be today.
That's not an option,
That's
unfortunately.
not an option because you can't be, because the whole world is so smart. How can you be more smarter now?
Yeah. Yeah. How can one be more smarter now?
I think AI.
It's AI.
And secondly, it's all about the basic philosophy of a human being is still the same, keeping your ears and eyes open. You learn a lot around every day from people around you, from whatever is happening around you, and you should be multidisciplinary.
What does that mean?
Means you one discipline, a lot of people only work, engineers only think one way. I believe you have to be multidisciplinary. You should understand design, you should understand product, you should understand the processes, you should understand the strategy, you should understand supply chain. You have to be multidisciplinary in whatever, and multidisciplinary in life also.
Yeah.
Life can be very fun if you are multidisciplinary.
Yeah.
If you understand music, if you understand literature, if you understand culture, if you love to travel, I think multidisciplinary can bring you.
Yeah. It also allows room for escaping the mundane, right? Like in the sense, like if
Absolutely.
you're only thinking, eating, breathing, sleeping product, it's kind of, you're also too close to it. You have to like remove yourself from that situation sometimes. Let's talk a little bit about technicality, right? What was the thought process when you initially started Future Group and the diversification? I ask this because for viewers who are watching, what does it take, A, in terms of building a group like that, and B, how do they make the decision of whether should I do it or should I not do it?
I think in hindsight, one can take a lot of pot shots on what we have done and what should be done and what should we have not done. But we reached a stage wherein we were building formats, and their formats were doing well, and we used to see crowd outside our store.
Yeah.
Whether it was Pantaloons, whether it was Big Bazaar, whether it was Central, Brand Factory, whatever we created, and whatever format or brand we created had got customers going. We got it product market fit, as we call it, right.
Correct.
And that gives you a kick. The success gives you a kick that now we understand the consumers, and if he has 100 rupees in his pocket, he's only spending 25 rupees with us. Why can't we make him spend maybe up till 50 rupees or up till 75 rupees of that 100 rupees? And that, I think that's where Future Group got created. We can predict the future, we can understand the consumers. So let's get his financial services business, let's get his savings, let's get his insurance, let's do gyms, let's do salons, let's get into their life's entertainment. So that was the kick of life.
Yeah.
And we did it, I think we did it a little too early. But technology allows you to do that today. But we did it without technology.
So why did you say that we did it too early? Because it was without technology? Was
Without
that the main
that time,
factor?
the technology was not there.
Right.
The CRMs were not developed to that extent.
Yeah.
Once you acquire a customer, you can build adjacencies.
Correct. And like
We started too early, too soon. Maybe, like I always say, we were Silsila movie a little ahead of time there.
yeah, ahead of your time. How have you dealt with the losses, right? Whether or failure. I mean, I don't like the word failures.
I love the word failure.
I like the word learning because I feel like something or
Yeah,
the
but
other.
failure is also a part of life. I have not met anybody who has not failed at something.
Correct. Yeah.
So
It's impossible.
Yeah, it's impossible.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with that word failure.
Yeah.
I think we have gone through failure, we have gone through destruction. And so that's been another journey of life. And I feel sometimes in a positive way or philosophical way, I say I'm blessed. I have seen destruction in my own. Normally it takes 3 generations to destroy something. I have seen everything in 1 generation.
But were you always coming from this lens? Because when you're in the moment.
So when I look back in my book, maybe which I wrote 15, 16 years back, I talked about creator, preserver and destroyer. And I always believe the person who creates is a destroyer himself. And no creation can happen without destruction.
Is Shiva also. So
Yeah.
After destruction comes the
So we
creation.
went through, that theory was written somewhere, and for me that theory came alive in my lifetime.
Would you like to delve deeper into this and what just specifically the mindset and the way to navigate? And I ask this
No, it's very
because-
difficult to navigate this, to be honest. For me, I have dealt with it in the first 6-8 months was very, very painful, very difficult. Now you have become philosophical to deal with it, but it's not easy. It's not easy to deal with destruction. It's not easy to deal with failures also.
Yeah.
And you have to overcome that thoughts and keep on. So for a normal human being, out of 10 thoughts which comes in, 7 are negative. And to make yourself better human being, you have to convert that negative into positive thoughts.
Yeah.
And so I keep on trying that every day. A lot of negative thoughts are around us, but I have to deal with positivity.
Yeah.
So maybe podcast has helped me to do that to a certain extent.
Well, the podcast has been a real revelation.
No, it's interesting. I'm just talking.
Yeah.
That was not part of the old world which we belong to.
Yeah, 100%.
And so I think for me to escape the old world is to participate in the new world.
Yes.
In some sense. And
Yes.
podcast has been one of the ways, plus mentoring people who are in this world and trying to understand this new world, which is the digital first world. I think that's made me able to deal with the destruction and the failure.
Correct. Just 2 questions on the subject and we'll move on. The first question I have is, you said the first 6-8 months were very difficult. And I'm asking from this lens because so many people who are watching are going through their version of failure or discussion or destruction. What are some actionable steps that one can take to come to this level that you are? I'm sure you're still dealing, but you know, you have a nuanced perspective on it. I've read a philosophy.
I think the ecosystem which you build around you helps you the most. Secondly, the multidisciplinary likings which you develop helps you a lot. Third is overcoming the negative thoughts which comes in. And lastly, your own confidence in yourself makes a lot of difference.
That you can overcome even that.
Confidence that you are capable of managing it.
And the second question I have on this is, any particular look back that you have now, that do you think from this lens also, that could I have done it differently?
I don't look at it from that lens at all.
Yeah.
I think that's a futile exercise.
Why do it? Why engage?
Why engage?
Yeah.
Obviously, there could have been something better. Obviously, there has been some error somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think as a leader, one has to take the blame to oneself only. You can't blame anything. You can't blame COVID. I can blame COVID to a great extent, but ultimately, you have to blame yourself.
Yeah.
Everybody dealt with COVID. You are not able to deal with it. So there are challenges.
Yeah. And when entrepreneurs are dealing with going to the next league, with scaling, there are lots of powerful players involved, right? What do you think is the one or two precautions that startup founders or entrepreneurs who are taking that step can keep in mind, owing to the experience?
I think we
that you
take
have?
life and business also very seriously. Life is also a series of events which will happen with you, and you have to deal with every event. And business also is a series of multiple events which happens in your business, and you have to learn to deal with it.
Yeah.
And you should believe in oneself. ये नहीं तो और कुछ है. You can't keep on blaming that this is why it is happening. Somebody was funded better. He killed us. He destroyed us. Somebody is so big he can destroy you. You have to find your own niche, find your own way.
Yeah. Move on.
Keep on moving on.
Yeah, absolutely. You said that, it's a way, philosophy was a way of leaving the old. I mean, digital was a way of leaving the old and probably looking to the new. So what's new for you now? Like, what excites you? What do you want to create next?
I think I'm enjoying what I'm doing at the moment. I have some stigma of the past, and I think I'm in a situation which is a rarity. I would say 1 in 5 billion kind of a person who is dealing with destruction and creation at the same time.
Yeah.
So
How
it's
does
a
it
very rare
Yeah.
phenomena in a way.
But how does it feel to be there?
That's my solace of dealing with the situation.
That I'm rare and
I'm rare.
I'm put in this situation.
I'm
for
put in a
reason.
situation and I have to be good. I have to come with good outcome out here.
Let's talk about that support structure. Let's talk about the family man. You got married very young, and as you were building this empire, the highs, the lows, what was the role of wife, partner, but also extended family in this journey?
I think I had unstinted support from the immediate family, which is my wife and children. They have been there with me. We have developed a relationship style which gives you the space to do what you want, and which doesn't obstruct you in doing or thinking whichever way you want to think. So that's been there. I have my daughters with whom, one of my elder daughter, I do a lot of intellectual sparring with her. She understands intellect in a very different way. Her understanding of human being is very different and unlike me. My younger daughter is a very different person. She is more detailed processes. She is more into perfection of whatever she is doing. So she is a part of some food business she is trying to build. So everybody is so different. Our strength lies in managing and understanding the differences. And my immediate family was a connected family. Again, they probably believed in me that I have done this, I'll come out of this whatever. I think the belief still exists. And that's a good thing. And secondly, the ecosystem which you believe, the friends, the relatives. And luckily, I have been a reasonably I would say, a reasonable giver without intention of expecting anything, which is also a very rare thing. I had no expectation. I don't build expectations from anyone.
Yeah.
And that's why I always feel I'm getting much more than what I deserve. So
How
a
do you
lot of people have supported me, a lot of people. And people whom I never expected, I think have supported me.
Who's one such person?
A lot of people. I don't want to name
You
people.
would, okay.
I would say lots and lots of people.
You also work with your family, right? On different fronts. How's that experience? Where you usually people, they say leave your work at work and come home without that. But if you're working with your family, how does it work as
I personally believe that you can only be happy if your people around you are happier. Anybody around you, if they're not happy, you can't be ever happy.
Yeah.
So it is in my selfish interest that I want everybody around me, the extended family, everybody around me happy. And that's been a philosophy of life.
Yeah.
So I don't look at the meritocracy or the abilities or the disabilities or the negative thing. I think if you are good, people around you will be good. And I have seen goodness all along. I knew that this person is not going to behave well with me. I identified 3-4 people, and that happened. So I was not at all disappointed.
Oh, so you identified it in advance?
I know people who are a giver and people who are a taker. I can easily identify.
Right.
And I know the people who are takers will only take from you. So you have nothing to offer to them now. They are not there with you.
Yeah.
So that's so natural. So I can easily judge, easily. And that's what I call, I possess a Divya Shakti wherein I can read people. How is he going to behave with me? Whether he'll pick up my call within the first 3 rings or whether he'll reply to a message. I can easily predict 100 out of 100 right.
So how have you developed this yardstick?
This is so easy.
How? But how can one do this?
But you know the way you have worked with them till now.
Yeah.
Their behavior in the market, their behavior with other people.
Yeah.
So human beings are human beings.
The predictable
We all have the selfish genes.
Hmm.
And the selfish gene will take over
At some point. Correct.
So I knew which are the people who are going to be selfish and not deal with me now.
I mean, at least there's no surprise and there's no element of surprise in this situation.
I'm not at all disappointed till now.
Yeah, it's a good place to be. Earlier we were speaking about, how there's a abundance, and with the songs about a man yearning for a woman's love is an era gone by. What do you think of love today? And what does love mean to you? From that old school lens, what does love mean to you?
I think love is, a lot of people say I'm very romantic at heart. I love the series which was made by Yash Chopra on the romantics also.
Yeah.
And I love lyrics which are what you call Shringar Ras or Bhakti Ras in a way, to a great extent. And I think love is love still. It doesn't change from old economy to new economy. And I think love is something which you should, like I have a granddaughter now. For me, I can see so much of love and expression between both of us. So
what makes for a good relationship? What has kept you all together?
Trust. And anybody speaking lies, I'm very paranoid about people telling lies to me. So the trust factor gets broken.
Yeah.
I don't mind not saying something, but saying a lie is a little no-no.
Why is it necessary? Like you can just be
it's not necessary. We should have a perfect, good relationship where a lie is not required.
On that note, let's talk about forgiveness. Do you find it easy to forgive? Do you find it easy to let go?
I think so.
Yeah. How have you arrived here? So many people find it
But what is your mind and heart will not converge unless you don't forgive. So I think forgiveness, there's nothing better than forgiveness. If somebody has made a mistake and somebody has annoyed you or dealt with you differently, you feel upset, yes.
Yeah.
But then you forgive them. Otherwise, you will not be at peace.
Correct.
So it's a selfish interest to be at peace. So forgive them. You have to hurt your ego to do that, but that's okay.
What are you currently reading in philosophy?
I'm reading Elon Musk right now.
Okay. Which book are you reading?
His latest book.
Anything on philosophy that you're reading?
I just finished a book on the small book on philosophy.
Called?
Trying to understand all the philosophers till date.
Oh, that's the name of the book?
Yeah, a small book on philosophy.
Okay, that's great for our readers to understand. It brings us to the end. Just a couple questions on advice, right? What advice would you give? This is the first question. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs who are just starting out in this very dynamic ecosystem where there's so much supply, there's so much, I can do this on social, I can do that. But what is the basic that they should focus on?
It's a new world for entrepreneurs now. I met somebody on the flight recently last week. He told me that they get around 120,000 applications for Shark Tank. So imagine the number of entrepreneurs in the country. I'm told there are more than close to 100,000 startups registered with the government. So in our era, the entrepreneurship was limited to very few. So the opportunity is emerging, and everybody will find their space. One has to believe in oneself. The whole ecosystem and environment has got created for entrepreneurs to now flourish or do something. But I think today's entrepreneurs want things a little faster. I think that's a challenge.
Like I start and I should just...
It just doesn't happen. There are stories of people, I think the stories of fundraising and you live happily ever after are the stories where people are aiming for. That's the end, that's the beginning of the story. But so in earlier Hindi movies in 60s and 70s, it was the boy and the girl meet and there has to be a villain, which was the father and
the father
or whomsoever it was. And then with one slap, the girl or the boy will correct himself and they will live happily ever after. That's not the new start of world now. So.
What are your top 3 book recommendations for anybody watching? You've named a few.
I love the book 0 to 1 quite a lot. I look at biographies now. Recently, I read the Ambuja Way, the Narottam Saxenia's story. That fascinated me a lot. I'm currently reading Elon Musk and I'm finding him a very interesting character. There is something about that man which is very, very fascinating. I've read a lot about Jeff Bezos. His letters to, I think, somebody with that kind of clarity and visualization. So there is so much to read.
Books on philosophy or spirituality that the youth can read.
I have not read books on spirituality. Spirituality is something which you work on your own.
Okay. Philosophy?
Philosophy also, it depends on which philosophy. I'm not a great reader on what you call philosophy per se as such, or a book, but I'm understanding. I recently read the poem which Elon Musk asked Groggy or the AI to write about love in a cosmic connection. And I'm very fascinated by understanding the universe. And I believe in our lifetime, if I'm able to understand 1% of the universe, it will be great. And that is what is very fascinating. I'm seeing most of the people very fascinated now while understanding more of the universe. There is some connection of something which is happening, which keeps the universe going. And we are one of the smaller planets, part of one system, and wherein we are living in a time and space which is measured very differently.
Correct.
So we don't know.
There's a lot of unknown.
So much of unknown, and to know that, I think it will need many, many lifetimes to understand. And that's a subject which I'm very fascinated by now. And that for me is life and philosophy.
One mantra that you've lived by your whole life, if there was one line that defined.
I think positivity. Everything takes things in a positive way.
Last question. What advice would you give to the youth in general? And I say in general because it's not related to entrepreneurship or business, but there's so much said about mental health, about suffering, and the digital age where you're constantly comparing.
So this is an interesting subject because I discovered this subject lately in the last 4-5 years of what gets any human being into a good, happy and a joyous state. Joy is a word I use more than happy also. Joy is kind of a blissful state. You are in a joyous state. I believe when the heart and mind converges. And your heart and mind, if it's at convergence level, or if and something is wrong, you make them converge. I think that's when you will find joyous, positive, and you will be able to do whatever you want to do in life. So, heart and mind convergence.
Figuring out that alignment.
No, you will always be able to crack it because your mind is saying something else and your heart is saying something else.
So which one do you listen to?
I was in a recent situation wherein the heart was saying something else and the mind was saying something else. And for 2 days, I let the heart prevail, but I got them in congruence or very recently.
How do you get that congruence? Just out
You
of
become conscious about it and you have to work it out. You have to give up something. You have to leave your ego. You have to leave a lot of things behind to get there.
It's a fascinating thought, and it's a good one to leave our audience with. Thank you so much. Sir.
Thank you.
It's been lots of lessons, and I'm looking forward to your leadership book that we'll upload for everybody. And I hope you enjoy this podcast since you're enjoying podcasts.
Good, great.
Yeah, thank you.
Good, thank you.
If you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon. Thank you all for being the best community, and I'll see you soon.